The infected zone is the region of the Middle East where extraterrestrial creatures have spread after landing on the American-Mexican border 10 years ago. The US has dispatched its troops to battle these creatures, but the bombing's indiscriminate nature has destroyed thousands of local houses and encouraged more rebels to oppose the American forces. As a sharpshooter, Sergeant Frater is now doing a mission inside the contaminated area. He keeps a close eye on 3 Arab males from a high roof while firing his gun at his target. Frater hesitates as the man approaches a Muslim woman with a kid, but he immediately gets his bearings and shoots the man dead. He then makes a hasty exit, attempting to avoid detection by making his way through the crowded market to his car. He observes the situation of the area, where explosions and monster bodies have become a regular feature of the landscape, as he drives out of the city to return to the USA base. Before being transported back to the Middle East, a group of pals are enjoying time with their loved ones in Detroit. When orphan Michael goes to pick up Frankie, who is the closest thing to a brother he has, he discovers him occupied with his girlfriend. Following that, they all travel to the hospital to see Sean's wife deliver a baby together with Inkalar. The 4 of them grew up together, and joining the same military unit extended their connection even more. Sean needs a diversion before departing to fight again, so the 4 men spend their final day as civilized beings playing basketball, smoking together, and watching a dog fight. Sean's wife begs him to remain a bit longer, but Sean needs a distraction. Because the dog is battling a baby monster, it is an especially unlawful dog fight. Although the dog first appears to be winning, the monster quickly strikes back and kills the dog. Because of his rage, the dog's owner shoots the monster back. The lads finish their day in the bar, where they are then treated to a wild party with drugs, women, and other vices. The gang arrives in the Middle East the next day via helicopter, allowing them to observe the region's devastation. Because of their size and tendency to wander in packs, the creatures are particularly frightening to observe. The monsters try to seize the helicopters as they approach the desert, but thankfully the pilot reacts quickly and flies away just in time for the region to be bombarded. The helicopters then arrive at the base. The men are welcomed by Frater and Sergeant Forrest, who describes the circumstances. Instead of eradicating the monsters, their main goal is to end the insurgency in the city. The group begins patrolling the city after a brief team-building exercise. The lads are highly uncomfortable as they go through the streets and come across people who are hostile against Americans. However, they begin to unwind as curious children approach them, asking for photographs and making it simpler to interact with the people. The squad then arrives to what they think to be a rebel stronghold, where they spend the rest of the day keeping an eye out for any hints on the containers that depart on trucks at irregular intervals. When darkness falls, they investigate the structure but discover no explosives or weapons. They do see 3 enormous creatures coming, but before they can respond, they run into a farmer who despises the American military because it claims to be there to fix things, but all it does is exacerbate the issue. They keep attempting to evict him since the American bombs murdered his family and his animals, but he is adamant about staying because this land is his and the containers only hold his goods. He also won't divulge any information on the rebels since he knows if he does, they'll murder him. In a fit of rage, Michael strikes the farmer to knock him out as the monster draws nearer and the farmer won't stop shrieking at them. One of the monsters eventually makes it to the farm, at which point the squad starts fire and repeatedly shoots him with shotguns until he is killed. Then the planes bomb the other 2 to finish them up. Frater screams at the squad as they arrive back to camp for failing to spot a bystander in time to prevent him from getting in the path. They were fortunate that he was merely a farmer rather than a bomber. The team will kill the entire squad if they aren't attentive enough. Frater and Forrest talk about the good old days after the lads have gone to sleep, claiming they were nothing like the pathetic modern generation. Forrest comments that Frater has been here too long and needs to visit his family since he is in such a foul mood and keeps drinking. Frater is motivated by this to contact his wife and urge her to put their kid on the phone since hearing her is all that keeps him going. The crew receives a new task after 12 weeks of patrols. The group must cautiously go through a dangerous area filled of mines and insurgents to rescue a colleague team that has become caught in the desert-infected zone and lost all connection. They snap a group photo before they depart as a record in case some people don't return. They see a number of lesser creatures while traveling and are shocked to learn that they are not hostile. However, one of the vehicles accidentally crushes a monster, which causes the drivers to get disoriented and crash into a mine. Sean exits one of the cars after the explosion severely ruins it, still alive and injured, but regrettably he steps directly into another mine. To make matters worse, The rebels use the opportunity to encircle them and start firing. The squad slowly moves to their wounded teammates while taking cover behind the automobile and returning fire. While the others take Sean's body over to inspect his wounds and learn he's lost his legs, Frater goes inside the car and is horrified to discover Forrest already dead. The squad takes up Sean and starts rushing towards the closest building as Frater offers cover after bandaging him as best he can. Frater had to shout at the lads to urge them to use their bullets wisely and aim precisely since they are so furious about what occurred that they start firing continually without even looking. The squad tries to ask the base for assistance as they continue to defend the structure, but they are informed that HQ does not have access to their location. While Incalar does his best to treat Sean and stem the bleeding, he tragically loses too much blood and passes away. The smaller creatures start to show up at that point, and HQ sends word over the radio that a drone is being sent to bomb the area. The crew wants to bring the body since they are upset at losing their comrade, but Frater shouts to them that it would be unnecessary weight and that letting their emotions get in the way will kill them. Just as the bomb goes off, the group reluctantly leaves Sean behind and flees. The squad finds an abandoned structure and determines it is empty before pausing to rest after several hours of traveling across the desert. When 2 sniper bullets are fired simultaneously as Frater tries to make touch with the base once more, Incalar instantly dies and Frankie sustains an abdominal wound. As soon as the squad is encircled by rebels, Frater orders them to surrender in order to save their lives. The team is quickly taken captive by the terrorists, who conceal their faces as they transport them to their hiding place where they are bound to chairs in a dilapidated chamber. Michael and Frater are devastated to learn that the militants want them to watch Frankie bleed to death when the bags are taken off. Frankie apologizes for his error before passing away as the pair attempts in vain to keep him awake with words of inspiration. Michael collapses completely, knocks over his chair, smacks his head, and loses consciousness. Once darkness falls, the monsters also make their way to this location. The majority of the terrorists leave right away in their trucks, but 2 of them enter the room with the intention of murdering the troops. Frater seizes the opportunity to strike back right away, trampling the men's heads till they are dead. Frater then frees Michael and orders him to grab the motorcycles outside while he clears the building after cutting the cords around his wrists and taking the attackers' guns. But before departing, Michael gives Frankie the opportunity to say goodbye properly. He searches the building for the rebel commander in search of retribution and starts striking him violently with an iron club till he falls to his death. Michael goes outdoors after taking some weapons and discovers a large creature tearing down the power wires. Michael is so exhausted and horrified by all this carnage that he shuts his ears in denial as the monster starts pounding the building too. Noises coming from within the building indicate Frater is battling the insurgents. A few hours later, Michael and Frater are riding the bikes they took from the terrorists through the desert. When Michael finally gives up and pauses to lay down in the sand, Frater tells him he's in shock and reminds him that they must finish the job or else all the dead would have been in vain. When the bikes eventually run out of fuel, the 2 must continue traveling on foot. They decide to spend the night inside an abandoned train car after coming to a rough location. They converse about their hometowns and family, and Frater admits that he has been in the army for so long that his daughter doesn't know him when he returns home. The following day, as they continue on, the group encounters a massive dead creature whose tentacles are still moving. The 2 are horrified to see a number of dead children inside a school bus that was also damaged by the explosion that killed the monster next to it. Michael discovers one of the children is still alive and takes him outside to attempt to help him while Frater searches for water or food. Frater explains that the child is in anguish and won't make it through the journey, so he attempts to offer him a gentle death by covering his mouth and nose. Michael feels awful enough to order Frater to stop when the child clings to his hand. A group of natives ride up on horses at that same time. Frater pulls his gun out right away, but Michael gives the child to a woman and gives up. The natives take the troops to their camp out of gratitude for helping one of their own. Frater and Michael join the villagers to enjoy their cuisine, their songs, and even a cigarette after getting cleaned up in an oasis and seeing the child get adequate care. Monsters may be seen in the distance, but no one disturbs them. Michael chooses to follow the woman after she leaves camp carrying a number of lights as night comes. It turns out that the lamps are positioned around the bus to serve as a memorial for the children who are being removed and given a dignified funeral. When a monster approaches, the lady sits to observe it, and Michael, who is inquisitive, follows her lead. Michael is startled by the outcome. The monster is there to mourn for his deceased sibling by scattering luminous spores throughout the ground, which results in lovely beams of light brightening the region. Michael eventually dozes off next to the woman on the ground, and the next morning they leave silently. Meanwhile, Frater is keeping an eye on the child they saved and starts to go crazy when he realizes the child is also dying, suggesting his efforts were in vain. Frater slaps Michael as he gets back to camp for talking to a female, when they should be focusing on the mission. He then leads Michael to the boy's body and tells him that they don't get to feel anything or play the hero in battle. The troops then depart the camp to carry out the remainder of their task. On their way out, they come across a youngster holding a can, which when he opens it, reveals a miniature creature. Since the monster is still a baby, Michael uses the container to release it and lets it bury itself in the sand. A town has been blasted when the two finally arrive at the site of their assignment a few hours later. The streets are deserted when they arrive, but as Michael turns around and goes behind a building, he discovers a group of children playing with guns. As the youngsters lead Frater to a facility where it is discovered that the team they were intended to help has already perished, Frater wants to know where they obtained those weapons. Frater ultimately snaps when he realizes he lost his men for nothing and starts threatening the townspeople while demanding to know who murdered the troops. He is speaking irrationally and isn't concerned that the children are watching or that these people are civilians. Michael is compelled to aim his gun at his senior officer after shooting a guy because Frater won't stop becoming upset. Michael is left with no option except to fire, as he looks back toward the onlookers and questions why he is even here. Frater is unable to handle the gravity of the tragedy and collapses to his knees while grasping his head. Then, as the gunshot wound starts to slowly bleed out, he makes the decision to step outdoors so that he may pass away while watching a group of monsters fend off approaching explosives in the distance. Michael gets saved by one of the helicopters, but he is only able to yell at the failure of this operation.